Hey, what's up everyone and welcome to Daily Code Buffer. In this video, we are going to see what is Spring Cloud Functions. So let's get started. So in the recent years, we have seen that serverless cloud functions have gained too much popularity in terms of deployment in cloud computing. So what is serverless functions? So serverless functions are a piece of code, a piece of application which can run without any server. What does that mean? Means you don't have to maintain a server to run those applications. So there are many services that you can use to run those serverless functions. The one example you can take is AWS Lambda. So the benefit of using is you just have to concentrate on the business logic of the application. You don't have to worry about the servers and handling of the servers. You just concentrate on your business logics and then you deploy it to the cloud computing as a serverless functions, and cloud computing will take care of everything else. It decouples the entire development lifecycle of the application or a business logic. So the same can be deployed to any of the platform. It supports a uniform programming model that can be used across the services available. So there are different cloud function adapters available for the different service providers that you can use to deploy the same code in different environments in the different services. It abstracts away all the different transport layer, network layer, infrastructure level details from the developer. So developer can only concentrate on the business logic. So the same business logic can be deployed to the multiple services available, whichever we prefer to use. So these are some basic advantages that we can get while using the serverless functions. So let's go ahead and see how we can create serverless functions in Spring Cloud Functions. Today in this video, we are going to create few of the functions and we will try to deploy it locally and see how we can use it. In the later videos, I will try to implement the same in AWS environment. We will create a serverless function and we will deploy the same to AWS Lambda and we can call it using the API gateway. So stay tuned for that as well and subscribe to my channel so that you won't miss that particular video. So let's go ahead and create a Spring Boot application and implement the Spring Cloud Functions. So here what we'll do, we will go ahead and go to the Spring Initializer. Here we'll be using the Java language. Spring Boot version is 2.4.0. We'll change the group as Daily Code Buffer. Spring Cloud Functions. And I'll give the package name as spring.function. My packaging would be of jar type, Java version is 11, and I don't have any dependencies to add. Okay, we'll add the dependencies in the pom.xml file later. So let's generate the project and open in IntelliJ IDEA. Okay. Okay, this is my project. I have one main file and in the resources I have application.properties file. In my pom.xml file, you can see that I have just Spring Boot Starter and Spring Boot Starter Test available. Okay, so now here we need to add the dependencies related to the Spring Cloud Functions. Okay, so let's go ahead and add those dependencies. We need to add the new build plugins as well, and we need to add the repositories as well in the pom.xml file so we can download the jar files from there. So let's go ahead and add those things. I'll be sharing this code with you guys and I'll add the link in the description below so you guys can check this out. So here I'm adding the Spring Cloud version property, and then in the dependencies I'm adding this Spring Cloud Starter function web dependency. Okay, and for this we will be adding the repositories as well. Okay, and the builder plugin. So I'm removing this builder plugin over here. Okay, and I'm adding the entire build plugin. Okay, so you can see that this is the Spring Boot thin layout plugin, so it will create a thin jar file for us so that we can deploy this to cloud functions. Okay, either it be AWS Lambda or anything else from the Azure or GCP. Now I need to add the repositories as well. Okay, so I've added the plugin repository and the repositories, and I'll add the dependency management also over here. Okay, now it should resolve the dependencies. Now you can see that all the dependencies are resolved. Now what we'll do, now we will create a Spring Cloud Functions. Okay, if you know about the functional interfaces in Java 8, then you will be familiar with the functional interface, supplier interface and the consumer interface. So we'll be using those things only over here. Okay, let's go to the Spring Cloud Functions application file, and here we'll be creating those serverless functions. Here in the serverless functions, the one thing important is we won't be creating or we won't be mapping the URL to a particular methods or a particular request. Okay, because it's not an HTTP or REST request, it's a serverless functions, and we will be connecting those serverless functions using the request handler to any of the API gateways. So let me give the example of AWS Lambda, that what you will be doing is you will be creating a serverless functions. Suppose I'm creating a serverless function in Spring Boot application, I'll be deploying that to AWS Lambda. It won't be having a HTTP or REST client for it. Okay, that function won't be having a HTTP or REST client. We will be connecting that functions through an API gateway. We have an API gateway service in the AWS, so we'll be connecting that API gateway as a trigger point to that serverless function. So that's how generally it works. So here we'll be creating a normal serverless functions over here and we'll run that in locally, and we will call using the curl command. So let's go ahead and create the functions. So here what we'll do, I will create a function public. We'll use the functional interface. So it is a functional interface. It is from the package java.util.function, and this is of type string and string. If you go to this function over here, you can see that the target and the return type. Okay, T is your argument and R is your result. So my input type is string and my output type is string. That's what I have taken over here, and I'm doing to uppercase method. I'm creating this method, okay, that will convert a string to uppercase, and here we'll be using lambda functions to return back the functional interface. Okay, so we'll do return whatever value we are getting over here, that value I'm using over here, and then what we'll do, new string builder of value will pass over here, whatever value it is here, and then dot to string dot to uppercase. Okay, so we'll return this particular thing. So this is a functional interface that is taking two parameters, a target and the return type. So we are giving target as a string and the return type as also string, and we are getting this value over here, and we are converting that value to uppercase and we are returning back the value. So this is the one method, this is the one serverless function that we have created to make this function available into a Spring Radar. So for that we'll be using a bean annotation. So once you use this bean annotation, this to uppercase will be used as a serverless function. We can call this particular function using this particular name, to uppercase. Let's create one more thing. Let's use the supplier. So what we'll be doing is public supplier. If you go to here, the supplier is taking the target object. Okay, so it's taking a T, which will be return type, and you can see that it's just having a get method. It is not taking any input parameters, so it will just return the values over here. So let's use this. What I'll do here is I'll say my return type is string over here, and I will say the method name as get message, and here I'll return welcome to daily code buffer. So the supplier is not taking any input parameters, it's just giving the return type as string, and we are passing the string over here as the return value. So this is also created. We'll annotate with @bean. So this function is also created. Now let's create one more function, a consumer function. So public consumer will only consume value. Okay, so suppose I'm consuming string over here, and my method is write message, and I'll do return value, whatever value I'm passing over here, I will do sysout. Okay, this function is also created. I'll annotate with @bean. Now you can see that we have created three functions. All the three are of different type. One is of function, supplier, and consumer. So now let's run this application and let's see how we can call this function using curl, because it's not a direct HTTP or REST API endpoints. Okay, so we need to call using the curl method. So let's run this application. Okay, you can see that my application is started and it's running on port 8080. Okay, as it's running on locally. So now let's go ahead and open command prompt. My first method is this one, okay, which will take a string as an input parameter and string as an output value. Okay, so let's call this. Use the curl command with -h. We will add the headers. We'll use content type is text/plain. We'll pass the URL. My URL is localhost colon 8080 is the port, and directly we will pass the name of the method over here. So the name of the method is to uppercase. So we'll just use to uppercase. Okay, and then we need to pass the values. So values I'll pass with -d. I'll pass with small letter shabir. So you can see that the function is been called to uppercase and the values we got written in uppercase. So we are able to call the first function. Now let's call the second function. The second function is this one. It's not taking any input parameter and it is returning the string value. So let's call this. We'll use the same one again. We'll remove the parameter values and we need to change the name also. The name of the method is getMessage. Okay, rest everything will remain the same. You can see that we got the message daily code buffer. Welcome to daily code buffer. Now let's call the third one. The third one is taking one value as an input parameter and it's not returning any value. So let's run this. Okay, so the method name is writeMessage and we need to pass one value. Subscribe to daily code buffer. So this value should be printed in my console. Let's see that. You can see that the value is printed in my console over here. Okay, so we are able to call all the three methods over here. So now let's go back to our IntelliJ IDEA. So now you can see that whatever functions we created, we annotate with @bean. So there is one more method to create the serverless functions is by creating the class and implementing the functional interfaces over here. So let's go ahead and create a class and implement this functional interface and see how we can create that as well. So we'll go ahead and here we'll create a new class over here and I'll say the name is to lowercase. This is the class I created and what I'll do, I'll implement the functional interface, that is function, and the return type is string and string, and here I need to implement the method. So I'll go ahead and implement the apply method. What this method will do, this method will do return new string builder with s dot to string dot to lowercase. So this method is converting a string which we are getting to lowercase and returning back the value. So now the Spring Boot should know that these are the serverless functions that we created and these serverless functions are in this particular package. We need to use that. Spring Boot should be able to understand those. So we need to add the properties for that. So let's add the property for that. So we'll go to the application.properties. Okay, and here we'll add the property Spring Cloud Function Scan Packages. So the value of this should be this one. Okay, so this is the package name. Inside this package we will be creating a serverless function. So let's give this value over here. So you can see that we created a to lowercase serverless function that is implementing a functional interface and implemented the apply method. So let's run this again and let's see how we can call this. Okay, so let's run this again. So you can see that application is started. So let's go to the command prompt and you can see here we can call. So the method is to lowercase. So when you call it, your first character should be of lowercase. So we'll call to lowercase and we'll give the value in all capital. Okay, it should be able to convert it to lowercase. You can see that everything is converted to lowercase. So this function we were able to call it. So now all these are a simple function that we created to understand how Spring Cloud Functions work. Now let's create one function that you can relate to, right? We will create one function that will get all the employee data from the database and we will show that. Now considering the timing also, what I will do is I will just create a method that will return the few of the employees over here. I won't be getting all the data from the database, but that's the end goal. You can get all the data from the database and you can return it, and you can also pass the data similarly what we have created in the functions and suppliers. Okay, So you can use the same, it's very easy over here. I'll just give you one example of the employee. So let's go ahead and create one employee class. I'll create the class employee. So this will behave as my domain, means my model which will store the data. Okay, so I'll add the values: private string, employee ID, private string, employee name, private string, email. Okay, and for this I'll be creating data setters and default constructor and a parameterized constructor and a toString method. So let's create those things: data setters, toString method, a constructor, parameterized constructor, and a constructor without anything. So this is the class which we created. Now let's create a wrapper class for this. So I'll be creating a wrapper class that will call employee data. Okay, this will have a list of employee. Okay, and here I'll create the data setters for this. Now let's create a serverless function that will return all the employees available in the database. I'll create a Java class that says get employees, considering this as a serverless function. Okay, so this get employees is not taking any of the input parameters, it will just return the list of employees available in a wrapper employee data. So we'll be just implementing a supplier interface over here. So we'll be implementing supply interface, and this supply interface is of type employee data, and we'll implement the method get. Now consider this is the method that I have created, which is considering or getting the data from the database, the list of all the employees available. Okay, so you can see that I have added few of the employees over here, and this will be returning the data over here, and we need to call this method here and we'll be returning the employee data object. So here what I'll be doing is I'll create the new employee data, and here I'll do employee data dot set employees, and I'll call this dot employees method, and here you can return employee data back. So this is the serverless function that we created to get all the data of the employees from the database and send back. So we just implemented the supplier interface over here. Now we can call this method over here. So let's run this and let's call this method. So you can see that application is started. Now let's go to the command prompt. Let's clear it out, and we should call this. So we'll call by curl -h content type as application/json. We'll be getting data in JSON format, and my URL is localhost :8080/get employees. Okay, G should be small, first character, get employees, and you can see that we are not passing any data, it's a supplier. Okay, so we can directly call this. So you can see that the method is called and we are able to get all the data over here. So you can see that this is the way we can create a serverless functions using Spring Cloud Functions, and after this we can deploy this to any of the serverless functions services available. So in the upcoming videos I'll show you how to deploy this serverless function that we created over here to AWS Lambda, and how we can call that AWS Lambda function using API gateway, how we can trigger that serverless function using the API gateway services. I hope you have liked this video, and if you have liked this video, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for the upcoming videos. Till then, happy coding. Bye bye.